What's up, guys? Today we're going to be doing a completely new type of video. Today we're going to be doing a ranking of all 10 Spider-Man films. Now, I know this is completely different from any other type of content, but don't click off yet. I know I'm usually make wrestling content, but this is the type of content that I want to make. We're making new content. We're indulging into other things, and this is our first ever video doing that. I'm wearing a Spider-Man shirt just to commemorate this video and commemorate my favorite fictional character of all time, Spider-Man. And we're going to be ranking every single movie out of the 10 Spider-Man movies from worst to best. Let's get started. Let's go, man. Alright, starting off our list with number 10, we have The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Now, let me explain. I love Spider-Man. Every single one of these movies are watchable. Every single one of these movies are fantastic. They're funny, they're hilarious, they have amazing moments, they have great scenes. The Amazing Spider-Man 2, yes, it is a good movie, but it's not near as good as any of the other movies on this list. This movie has easily the most amount of problems out of all the other movies on this list. And it's just kind of like the movie that I have the least personal connection to. I love Spider-Man. I grew up with Spider-Man. I've probably watched the original Sam Raimi trilogy hundreds of times when I was a little kid. But I grew up, and when I was 12, this movie dropped, and I did not like it then. I don't like it now. It was not necessarily a movie that I enjoyed. I think the villain in Electro was bad. I think, obviously, I'm not a big fan of the Green Goblin change and everything they did with that. I mean, they had Harry looking for Spider-Man's blood because Spider-Man has self-heal. And in the movie, they never even explain how Spider-Man has self-heal. Harry shouldn't even know that's necessarily even a power. They never explain these things. There's so many plot holes in this movie. Harry's motivation of having this fake-ass Osborn curse it doesn't make sense. There's so many things in this movie that just don't make sense and just I have problems with. Now, does it take away from the fact that, yes, it has amazing moments like the Spider-Man swinging through the city? This is the best Spider-Man suit looking wise we've ever had. But then, like, why are we spending so much time on this subplot about Peter's parents, Peter Parker's parents being such an important character or important narrative thread in this story, when that is like one of the most unimportant characters in the Spider-Man series in general? That nobody talks or nobody cares about Peter's parents because it's always just been Aunt May, Uncle Ben. That's all it's always been, and that's always it should be. It shouldn't necessarily be this oh man, we gotta find out what happened to his parents. And then the fact that it's Peter, we'll get into that when we get to Amazing Spider-Man, but the fact that they make Peter like the only person that's able to become Spider-Man in this universe is just such a dislikable part about this whole entire series. I'm way lower on the Amazing Spider-Man movies than most people, though. But I do love Andrew Garfield. I think Andrew Garfield's amazing in this movie. He is easily the best part of this movie. But yeah, let's move on with number 9, and that is The Amazing Spider-Man. I do not like these movies, and I'm just gonna, I'll just throw this in here too. I just was not a fan. I'm not a fan of The Amazing Spider-Man movies, and I gotta say, it has nothing to do really with the cast or like Andrew Garfield. It just has like problems with like personal problems with the writing and the decisions made in these movies that I just don't sit right with me. There's a huge plot and part of this movie where Peter becomes Spider-Man because he gotten this motivation from hatred over the person that killed his uncle, right? And so he ends up he starts harassing and torturing, almost torturing people that somewhat look like the killer of his uncle, and he's trying to find this mark on their wrist, and he is putting them in situations where they're literally like on the verge of death. And in the movie acts like this is some heroic moment, like, oh my gosh, he's finally becoming Spider-Man. But this is arguably like the most evil we've ever seen Spider-Man. This is Peter Parker. This is somebody that shouldn't necessarily have this much hatred. Now, I do understand that in the Tobey movies, he kills his uncle's killer, or who we thought it was the uncle's killer in the first movie, but he realizes that was a wrong thing immediately. This Peter is driven by hatred and by like the want of revenge on the murderer of his uncle, and that's just not Peter Parker. It reminds me a lot of the Superior Spider-Man story, where Doc Ock becomes Spider-Man, and he's acting different compared to what Peter normally does, and everybody's like, well, what's wrong with Peter? Well, it was actually Doc Ock. That's kind of like what this Peter is acting like. It makes me angry. I don't necessarily, also, I'm never really a big fan of the lizard story where it's like, oh, I'm trying to make the whole entire city into lizards. It just doesn't make sense, and it's stupid, and I don't like the movies. Like, they're actually way lower than they probably should be. I probably have them as like a 4 or 5 out of 10 on Letterboxd if I was to rank them. I don't like these movies like at all. Moving on though, the next movie on our list is Spider-Man Far From Home. Now, this movie is, again, like I said, I don't dislike any of these movies, but this is the movie that I probably have lower compared to like the Sam Raimi trilogy. And I'm a humongous fan of the MCU Spider-Man movies, and like I said, this movie isn't bad, but it's not necessarily a Spider-Man movie. It's kind of more like a spy movie, with Peter as the main character. They really focus in on S.H.I.E.L.D. being a part of this, and it reminds me a lot of the Ultimate Spider-Man TV show, where he's a member of S.H.I.E.L.D. and he's taking orders by Nick Fury and all of that, and it's not necessarily something that like gives me Spider-Man vibes. You know what I mean? Spider-Man is my friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, and when you take Spider-Man not only out of New York City and into Europe, but as well as he's working for S.H.I.E.L.D. and he's taking these orders from Nick Fury, and he's basically an Avenger at this point. And I know this is after Endgame, I know this is after Infinity War, and he is an Avenger, but I like a more grounded Spider-Man story, and that's just not what this is. I think Quentin Beck or Jake Gyllenhaal's performance as Mysterio is absolutely fantastic. Easily the best part of this movie for me. I think he is amazing. There's some really good scenes in this movie though. There's like the scene where Peter uses his spider sense to fight through the drones. There's the scene where Mysterio is using all the drones to make Peter like go through these memories and this hell that he was getting put through, and then he gets hit by the train at the end of that scene, and it's like, whoa, dude, like, this is crazy. I think the reveal of Quentin Beck being evil, even though everybody knew Mysterio was a bad guy, they didn't really play it like that was what was going on immediately, and so he was like a good guy, and then the reveal of him being bad was played perfectly. It's still one of my favorite scenes in all of Spider-Man, but again, I still do have problems with the movie. It's not saying that it's not enjoyable, I just have it lower because I don't, like, again, a lot of these movies comes down to personal connection, how I feel personally about the movie. Some of these movies really mean a lot to me, and this movie doesn't necessarily feel like that when it comes to all the other movies. But yeah, Far From Home is still an amazing movie. I love it, but it's just lower on my list compared to others. We are now entering after the amazing movies, because like the TASM movies, I do like them, but they're not like these amazing movies that I hold on to the standard. Now we've entered this level where I like all these movies, but I just have this one lower than all the other ones. Next on our list, number 7, we have Spider-Man 3. Now, Spider-Man 3 is obviously the worst out of the Sam Raimi trilogy. It is, you know, has so many problems with it. It's got so many crazy moments, so many funny moments, a lot of problems, a lot of, you know, bad writing, blah, blah, blah. You can say whatever you want, but again, this movie means so much to me. This movie came out when I was 3 years old, and I remember watching this movie probably over 100 times when I was a kid. I thought this movie was the greatest movie I'd ever seen. I thought Venom was so cool, even though I don't like what he does. You know, in hindsight, I don't think Venom's a good character in this movie, but I think everything with the symbiote spider, that scene when he awakens on the side of the building in the symbiote suit and he flexes his muscles and dude, it is still one of my favorite scenes in all of film, honestly. I think the Sandman scene where he gets turned into Sandman is performed and done absolutely perfectly. I love that part. And yeah, again, this movie is really loaded. It's really jam-packed. It's got a lot of moments. It starts off with, you know, Peter fighting, you know, Green Goblin for the ring, and then now he's fighting Sandman, and then now he's fighting Green Goblin again, and then he's fighting Sandman again, and now Venom's here, and then it's super packed. There's aliens in this movie. They introduce aliens in this universe, which is crazy to even think that even exists. And you know, easily my least favorite part about this movie is MJ. I don't like Kirsten Dunst as MJ at all. I think she is super unlikable, and we'll get to her more later in the other two movies, but I can't stand her, and I don't like her in this movie as well. But yeah, no, I have this at 7. It's still an enjoyable movie. I think it's also the funniest Spider-Man movie. I think that there's so many good moments and funny moments in the Sam Raimi trilogy, but this one is the funniest out of the 3, even though all 3 are like almost 10 out of 10 comedies, this is still the funniest in my opinion. This movie's absolutely fantastic, and it's got J. Jonah in it, and J. Jonah Jameson is amazing. Let's move on though. We got number 6, and number 6 on my list is Spider-Man 1. Now, Spider-Man 1 is a fantastic film. I think Spider-Man 1 is one of the most just greatest, you know, films put to screen. I think it has such a cultural impact on the world. It is the beginning of all like superhero movies. If it wasn't for Spider-Man 1, we would not have the MCU now. We wouldn't have all of these movies that we have, because Spider-Man 1 was the groundwork for a lot of these original stories. Like, you know, I know X-Men came out before it, but then movies like Daredevil, like Blade, like Ghost Rider, these were the early 2000 movies that wanted to base their story kind of around like how Spider-Man did. And then later on, we got Iron Man, we got Hulk, we got Thor, and then the MCU was built. This movie is such a groundbreaking movie for all of history. In 2002, it was such an amazing movie, and it's another one where I watched it probably 100 times when I was a child. I have this movie ingrained into my brain. I could probably tell you every single scene back to back to back to back to back. I have so many thoughts on this movie and so many great like memories watching it. It is hilarious. But I gotta talk about something. Tobey Maguire is the most dorky looking person to ever play Spider-Man. Easily, hands down. I love Tobey Maguire to death, but man, he has like a punchable face. I don't know what it is about him, but he's just so goofy looking. And then his narrating, I know we can talk about this later, but like his narrations that he does is so hilarious. Like, play a narration actually from Spider-Man 1.
The woman I've loved since before I even liked girls. I'd like to tell you that's me next to her. Heck, I'd even take him.
That's what I'm talking about. Like, it is hilarious. Like, he has no... Tobey Maguire, he struggles to, like, prove to me that he's an actor. And just watching it in hindsight, it's kind of... And also, these movies don't really look good. These movies are dated. Like, really, really dated. There's a lot of, like, visual effects in this movie that just do not hold up to these standards nowadays. But it doesn't take away from the fact that the movie is good. It's very enjoyable. I love this movie to death. Number 5. My fifth movie on the list is Spider-Man 2. I got all the Sam Raimi movies all back to back to back. It's kind of like a thing where I think all these movies are pretty similar in like level of just, you know, goodness. I think that's such the wrong words to say. I think these are all on the same level, the same tier. They're all good movies. I just think one is better than the other. And this is obviously the better movie. This is the movie though that I had the least connection to when I was a child. I remember seeing Spider-Man 3. I remember seeing Spider-Man 1 hundreds and hundreds of times, but I think I could probably only see Spider-Man 2 a handful of times. But Spider-Man 2 is still an amazing movie. There's a reason why I have it above it, because this movie is the better movie out of the 3 movies. This movie has a lot of problems though, and people like to ignore that because of the amazing moments. Like, I mean, everybody's probably talked about it in the past, but the train scene in Spider-Man 2 still goes down today as one of the greatest film scenes that I've ever witnessed. I think the scene where he's, you know, when he's holding on to that train and then the entire like train picks him up with his mask off, and they all realize that he's just a child, a kid, a teenager that is working his life to save this city and keep it protected. It is such a humongous symbol of hope that anybody could be wearing that mask, and it's amazing. I'm just getting chills talking about it right now. I'm not gonna lie, but man, this movie does have problems, and one of the biggest problems is MJ. I can't stand her in this movie, dude. She is so just annoying. Like, she irks me, man. She has these plots with this man that she's getting married to, and there's a whole scene dedicated to her kissing him upside down to test something to see if it's like just like the kiss or whatever. It's like, can you kiss me like how this one guy kissed me? That's weird. If I'm that guy, I'm like, why do you want me to kiss you like another person kissed you? You know what I mean? Like, let me just kiss you. I'm your husband. Or not your husband, but I'm your fiance. Like, also, Harry in this movie, not necessarily a good act. Not really. I don't really think he did that good. Like, he's got some pretty funny scenes. Like, there's this one scene where he gets saved by Spider-Man in the apartment whenever Doc Ock's going through the test, and he gets, you know, moved out of the way of some rubble, literally saves his life, and he looks at him, he's like, this doesn't change anything. and then later on, he's down on the streets, and you know, they got the 911 operators there, and he's like, I'm ruined. I have nothing left except Spider-Man. And it's like, these movies are just so silly. Like, they're just so silly. I think these movies are So great. Sorry, I forgot to mention Green Goblin in the first part. I think that is the greatest movie villain in Marvel history. Let me just clarify. But still, talking about Spider-Man 2, I think Doc Ock is amazing in this movie. I think he is absolutely fantastic. Just an amazing performances, and you know, these characters, there's a reason why they're so iconic nowadays, and it's because of the way that they were performed all the way back then, back in 2004 when this movie came out. It's iconic. This movie is fantastic, absolutely amazing, and that's number 5. Moving on though, we got number 4, and that is Spider-Man Homecoming. Now, the reason I have this movie so high is because when I went and watched this, I thought it was the best movie in the MCU when it first came out. I thought it was so funny, and that was the big thing for me. It was hilarious, and the main thing that like carried it to that level was the fact that it was so relatable to the person I was at that age. I was 13 when this movie came out. It came out in 2017, and I just related to it so much because it shows this different world of the MCU, and I'm a humongous MCU fan. And it shows this different world of the MCU of what it's like to be like a high schooler in the Marvel universe. These kids are doing like kiss, marry, kill with you know, superheroes. They're talking about superheroes like they're celebrities, and you know, it's really, really fun to me. I think it's cool. I think it's like, it's a different side of this universe that you don't necessarily see too much whenever they're focused so much on like the Avengers, and they're focused so much on, you know, showing these humongous like not grounded stories. And then you get this Spider-Man film that is about a grounded look on the MCU, and that is one of my favorite things about this movie. As well as a lot of people say, and there's this one specific person online, and I'm not gonna mention names, whatever, but he talks about how Spider-Man is the worst character in his own movie, how he doesn't do anything cool. Spider-Man has a moment in this movie, right? He goes face to face with Vulture, right? And he talks to Vulture, and then, but he's not in his normal suit because he's got his suit taken away by Tony earlier in the movie, right? The Vulture's like, yo, I'm gonna kill you now, and then he destroys the building, and then Spider-Man is under all the rubble, right? And then he has this incredible moment where Peter is screaming for help because he's stuck under all the rubble, and then he realizes that there's not going to be help coming, and if he's going to get out of this, he has to do it himself, and he pushes himself out of that situation and just has that amazing, beautiful moment where he picks up all the rubble off of him and throws it off of him, and he gets out of that situation, and he's not in his suit. He's not in no Iron Spider suit. He is in his hoodie and sweatpants, and he's doing this thing. This is my Spider-Man. Saying that he is a lame character, that he doesn't do anything cool in this movie, is absolutely just delusional to me, because that scene exists. There's multiple scenes in this movie. He defeats the Vulture, and instead of fighting Vulture, he tries to save his life because he realizes that Vulture living is way more important than Vulture dying, and that is the key moments of Spider-Man that I love. As well as this movie's hilarious. Like, the whole scene with Ned in the lab, the computer lab, and then the person walks in, he's like, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm watching
porn.
You know, it's hilarious. Hilarious movie. I think this movie is absolutely fantastic. Number 4 on my list. All right, number 3 on the list, I have Spider-Man No Way Home. Now, let me just talk about this. This movie is an event. This movie is amazing. This is the end game of the Spider-Man movies. This movie is just, I will never forget when I went and saw this movie in theater, because it was such an amazing moment. Seeing Toby and Andrew on that screen for the first time in so long, and that pop in my crowd was absolutely fantastic. I remember the chills. I'm just getting chills just thinking about it right now. Just reliving that moment is something I want to do. If I could go back and live that moment again, I probably would, because it was such a fantastic moment in time for me. Spider-Man has always been my favorite fictional character, and the fact that they had this movie with all 3 of these Spider-Men that I grew up with, it's just absolutely fantastic. It still blows my mind to this day that we even have that, as well as we have the greatest portrayal of Green Goblin, Norman Osborn, ever by Willem Dafoe in this movie. He is so good in this movie. He is a top 5 MCU villain for me, just off that performance in that movie alone, compared to his performance as well in Spider-Man 1. It's absolutely fantastic. He translates perfectly from that movie to this movie, and it's been 20 years. As well as we have the amazing performance for Dr. Octopus. We have the change of character for Electro that did fantastic by Jamie Foxx. And then we have the amazing emotional moment of Aunt May dying and telling Peter finally, with great power comes great responsibility. Peter has finally finished his origin story after 3 whole years to realize that he has this great power and he needs to save people with it. He already was doing that, but now he's really learned the consequences of his actions and what can happen if he makes the wrong decision by losing his Aunt May. And now he's lost that and he has nothing left, and he realizes that all he has is this city that grew up with, and he's gonna be the protector of it. What does he do to protect it? Team up with 2 other Spider-Man and take on the greatest collection of villains arguably in history all together. Such an amazing climax, such an amazing movie. This movie just gives me chills thinking about it. It is arguably the most rewatchable movie in the MCU as well, because you get to relive these moments that you can just think about when you were in the theater and you got to see this for the first time. I love this movie to death. It's number 3. But now it is time to talk about my 2 favorite movies arguably of all time, and this one movie, number 1, is my favorite movie of all time. Let's get to number 2, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is the greatest animated film I've ever seen. That is not number 1 on my list. This movie is absolutely fantastic. I think Spider-Man 2099 being the antagonist of this movie, even though he's a version of Spider-Man, and his reasoning for why he does what he does is so interesting. His backstory is so compelling, so understanding on why he is so serious, why he takes his job so literally, why he doesn't want to see other worlds get destroyed because he lost his doing what Miles wants to do. Miles in this story is so amazing. His love for his family carries him so much that he's risking the life of the multiverse to save his father. And I know a lot of people don't like that ending, but I loved it, and it makes me so excited for Beyond the Spider-Verse. I think every single character in this movie is fantastic. The action scenes, the animation, the music, the soundtrack in this movie is arguably my favorite soundtrack in history. I still listen to it to this day. Self-Love, Am I Dreaming? There's so many movies on this. Metro Boomin did an amazing job making that playlist. Not playlist, but that album. It's absolutely fantastic. I love it to death, and this movie is so great. I love it to death, but it's not number 1. Because you know what number 1 is? Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. This movie changed my life. It altered my brain chemistry. The leap of faith scene in this movie is the greatest scene in any film ever. This is my favorite movie of all time. I love this movie. The comedy is fantastic. Miles' relationship with his uncle, absolutely fantastic and compelling, and it is one of my favorite just on-screen relationships I've ever seen, because you really feel like these people are family. His relationship with his father and his mother, completely understanding, especially at my life, because I was a 14-year-old that has struggles with his relationship with his parents sometimes and has arguments with their parents. And you know, I don't relate to Miles culturally, but I relate to Miles when it comes to where he is in life, who he is as a person, and him growing up to becoming this greater person. Me personally, I'm going through that right now. I'm in college. I'm trying to become an amazing person in my future, and that's what Miles is learning, what he's gonna have to go through. I think Gwen in this movie is absolutely fantastic. I think the cast of this movie with Spider-Noir, Spider-Ham, you know, Penny Parker, and then, you know, the amazing performance of, you know, Spider-Man Peter Parker in this movie. I love this movie so much. It makes me so happy just even thinking about it. And yeah, that's my number 1, and it's also my favorite movie of all time. Again, the soundtrack, the villains, the animation, the character work, the action scenes, the final fight. Oh, it's so good, dude. I love this movie to death. Number 1. And that's my list. That's my list of all 10 Spider-Man movies ranked from worst to best. And let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you agree with some of my takes. And if you like the video, just make sure you drop a like, subscribe. Expect more content like this coming out. We'll still be doing things like wrestling reviews and wrestling predictions and some more wrestling videos. But we'll also be doing things like reviewing movies, reviewing my favorite movies, doing rankings of movies. We're doing a lot more, and I wanted to start it with my favorite character of all time, Spider-Man. I hope you guys enjoyed the video genuinely, and I love you guys all so much. I'll see y'all later. Peace out.